Hello, Anomaly here, and welcome to another Mistweaver commentary video. Today we're going to be talking about Star Augur Etraeus, one of the bosses in the new raid Nighthold. And by all accounts, he probably has one of the coolest boss rooms we've had in a while. Probably, I mean, really since Algalon in Ulduar, maybe. I'm trying to think of any other ones that have a very kind of similar theme, but look really interesting. So get a chance to check it out. But without further ado, let's jump right into the fight. So for the most part, this fight is fairly boring. The first three phases, not too much is going on. But right off the bat, it is a little scary. Your tanks get chunked. They take a ton of damage, really until the room kind of blows up and expands the first time. And that happens, I think, it like around 90% or so when he goes in the first kind of nether traversal. Maybe it's on a specific timer, but for the most part, not too crazy. So as you can see there, I throw out some cheevers. I've got my rem on, keeping it on cooldown, just kind of getting those out. Yeah, most of the raid is fairly topped. I think ultimately we probably overhealed this fight. Um, being the first kill, we went with who was on, and it being kind of a flexible raid. But we ended up going with six healers, probably a little too much. So, um, and again, since it is our kind of our first fight time through it, I may use some stuff incorrectly. So you'll see there I popped Chi about 10 seconds ago. I thought these frost debuffs were ended up doing more damage than they did. I think this is probably like our third, maybe second or third pull. We didn't have too many on this boss. This might actually be our first pull, to be quite honest with you. Um, and yeah, I mean, I thought there'd probably end up being a little bit more damage. You can see there we take like a lot of random damage, unneeded damage, just for people not running in correctly. Um, Again, really did not need to probably use Manatee and a bunch of essence fonts right there. I did, but we potentially could have gotten away with just using Manatee and some Vivifies or things like that. So not too much going on. You see I'm hard casting some Vivifies. You'll see that I'm really kind of chewing into some mana at this point, and I'm gonna kind of try and call this out, but this is probably a big issue as we get later in the fight. Not ever actually seeing phase three, just knowing it was quote unquote a raid damage phase. Didn't really know how much mana I need to have going in there. If I could do this probably all over again, probably would not have wasted as much mana, right? Kind of continue to use Ram on cooldown, continue to use Chi Burst on cooldown, continue using Thunder Focus T with Vivify on cooldown, all that good stuff. But I mean, Essence fonts I cast, I'll call them out. Really don't need to. For the most part, I could probably sit over 90% mana for this fight and be perfectly okay. That Essence font potentially needed, but just with the amount of frost debuffs that are out right now as we're going into the next phase. But honestly, um, just some poor play I think on my part. Um, I did do a fairly good job this fight of just keeping my Shayloon stacks fairly low. I like to use it a little bit sooner than it gets up to five right now. But again, with the amount of healers we had and just the amount of, I guess, the not amount of damage that's coming out, it's a little bit difficult to kind of use that type of stuff. So for this fell phase, one of the things I think I did well, not using Manatee and Essence Font, not one of them, but because he does the ability, so in the Frost phase, we ran into the boss. The fell phase is the opposite. You run away from the boss. I did a fairly good job of just positioning myself, always having a clear avenue to the end or to the outside wall. So I think I did a fairly good job of that. Um, So obviously here's that ability there. People just need to kind of run out, get towards the outside. So again, some Shayloon stacks get a little high. I do drop enveloping on the tanks there. Probably a good use of enveloping, particularly because our tanks like to stand in the fell. And even on tanks, after like two or three debuffs, it does a fair amount of damage. So. But yeah, you'll see folks taking some fell damage here. Honestly, pretty much all of this is avoidable. Pretty sure most of somebody in the melee dropped a bunch of fell right in the melee. They got a bunch of stacks, so that's probably avoidable. At which point, the mana in general will stay higher. I'm now down to 50%, not even phase three yet, so it's definitely potentially an issue. And now I'm kind of realizing that it's starting to be an issue. And you'll see kind of as we get into this final piece why that's the case. So not too much going on here. Again, Rem on cooldown, Thunder Focus T on cooldown. Just trying to right now. I think I'm trying to conserve some mana. You can see I'm channeling Soothing a little bit longer than I should. Hardcast is enveloping there, not the best place, and to do a Mana Tea off cooldown, so ultimately could probably have ended up using it there. So do pop a Lay Torn here, which I think is probably the best place you can do it in this fight, just because of the raid damage coming into this final phase. And actually get all of it off before there's really any too terribly large amounts of damage. Um, so one of the big things in this phase is just there's an ad that comes out and he does like a random AoE where if you're staring at it, you either something bad happens. You don't want to look at it when he's casting it. Um, and what I do is I basically point myself towards the opposite way and never turn away from where we're tanking the ad. It's probably the worst thing I could have done. Not the worst thing, but it's not a good thing. Just because of the use of Chi Burst, right? So Chi Burst is a great spell to use during the AoE. Like hitting it here, I'm Mana Tea Essence Font, not bad, but probably should save that for when the AoE gets a little bit harder. It's a little bit harder. Um, but again, I use my Chi Burst facing away from the melee. All our melee are actually on the ad right now, so I'm missing out on basically, in my case, about half the raid with Chi Burst. So, going in next time, probably a big thing you can work on. Um, the other thing is, I do use a lot of essence fonts here. For the first AoE the ad does, I can probably skip using any sort of Manatee essence font combo, just because that damage is not as great, and definitely can work on that moving forward. The other thing is I'm leaving this Vivify proc up for forever. Rem has been off cooldown for a little bit. So there's definitely some improvements that can be made in just making sure, even through this phase, keep those on cooldown. Again, this is the first, maybe the second time we saw this phase. So again, it goes into this like first kill mentality of I kind of lose, at least personally, I lose just kind of a cadence in my head because it's the first time we're seeing this type of damage. So um, at that point, we really need to, I need to work on kind of just remembering all the things that you're supposed to do as a Mistweaver and just continue to do those. So coming up here, we eventually get a third AoE, and I believe I drop Revival on this one if I'm correct, right? Yeah, which is the greatest, is a really good spot to drop it. We didn't really have any other healer cooldowns up, as you can see. Revival is great to be used there. So definitely you can use Revival earlier if it gets hairy, but I would really save it for this phase and probably for the second ad. The first ad you should be harrowing on, it'll be down. So definitely save it for that second ad and probably the third explosion. So yeah, I mean, that's really the end of the fight. We get another ad. We don't even look at it. We just focus the boss. The key thing, like I said, is that positioning yourself. You want to make sure your chi bursts are hitting the melee, or really hitting as many people as you can. In this case, it's super simple. All the range are in one clump, all the melee in the other. Just face the melee and hit your chi burst button. Um, the other thing is just making sure I use Mana Tea a little bit more effectively. As you can see, I'm out of mana at this point, so if I had used my mana more effectively in the first part of the fight, definitely could have ended up with more mana here. I think I started that phase at 80%, between 70 and 80%, even with a Lay Torrent. If with the Lay Torrent I could have hit 100% mana, I would have had plenty of mana towards the end of there to kind of get through the fight. So. But yeah, but that is Star Augur. Again, probably the prettiest room we've seen in a while. Really like it. Really like the way the phases kind of play on each other. Can't wait to kind of do this guy on Mythic. I think he'll be a lot of fun. And judging by the world first race, I think at least when I'm recording this, only Serenity's killed it. But it looks like it'll be a great fight. So as always, thank you guys very much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want to talk about, use the comments below. Check us out, or check myself out on the Monk Discord. I'm always there trying to answer what I can. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for your time, and we will talk to you all later.